think we're here. No. Here we go. Damn it. Hola a todos, ya son las 5 de la tarde, soy José Guzmán, coordinador general de Link Construction. Ya tenemos a Glenn. Hi, Glenn.
Hi,
También tenemos,
can you hear me?
yes. También tenemos
Okay.
a Juan Pablo Vázquez, que va a ser uno de nuestros moderadores. Juan Pablo, ¿cómo estás? No te escucho.
Aló, ¿ahora me escuchas?
Ahora sí.
¿Qué tal? Hello, Glenn.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm still on the right side of the daisies.
Bueno, comenzamos. En unos minutos se está conectando más gente de varios grupos que tenemos. Por favor, 2 minutos para comenzar.
Okay, are you ready for me to start?
Juan Pablo, por favor, preséntalo
Sí.
a Glenn. Es una conferencia solo en inglés, no hay traducción, y ayúdanos tú con la moderación para poder trasladarle alguna consulta que el público le quiera hacer a Glenn. Te paso
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos, soy Juan Pablo Vázquez. Bueno, todo el gusto de presentar a Glenn Ballard. Glenn es profesor de la Universidad de Berkeley, es fundador del grupo de Link Construction, tanto el de Estados Unidos como el internacional. Glenn pues tiene muchos años en esto, maneja perfectamente, bueno, es uno de los creadores de la filosofía de Link Construction. Y tenemos la suerte pues que esté con nosotros ahora y que puedan escucharlo a él directamente. Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay, so can you see my slides?
Yes.
La presentación, la vez,
Está.
no, I don't see any the presentation yet.
Sí, él está como administrador, puede compartir su presentación.
Ok. Ya, ok. So you are going to put your presentation, or?
Yeah, I thought I had done, but let me go back and see if I can do it.
Yeah. I'll tell you when it's...
So I need to share screen.
Hola, Jorge Luis.
También acaba de entrar Jorge Luis Izquierdo.
Que está Juan Germán también.
Nos va a ayudar a Jorge Luis, también nos va a ayudar a un poco a moderar la ponencia de Glenn. Jorge Luis, ¿cómo estás? Buenas tardes.
Okay. Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. I want to share my thoughts about how we can push forward towards the lean transformation of the construction industry. And I want to talk about what we can do both bottom up and top down. Okay?
Okay.
So if you don't understand something you need me to explain, please just stop me, okay?
Okay, right.
Okay, so the first thing is what you can do, what any of us can do, any individuals can do, how we can do lean without almost anyone else, okay? So what I would suggest is that any one of us, whether anyone else is doing it or not, we can learn to make promises that should and can be kept by following the reliable promising process, okay? Secondly, we can analyze breakdowns, by which I mean errors, injuries, broken promises, any unintended consequence of an action, and develop countermeasures to prevent reoccurrence of those breakdowns. And we do that by using 5 whys analysis. And then the third is that any of us can improve the way we do our own work. And with others involved with you in work processes, we can improve those processes using value stream mapping, which I would prefer to call, following Toyota, material and information flow diagrams, okay, which more accurately describes them.
Hey, Glenn, I don't see any pictures in the presentation. Anyone, ¿alguien ve la presentación en la pantalla?
You're not seeing my slides?
Está en blanco la pantalla.
Hi, Glenn. We see blank. So
Yeah.
we were thinking that you were.
That's
yeah,
not.
the screen is white.
Yeah, and now we see an
I
arrow.
can see the arrow, but not no any images.
Huh. I'm not sure how to fix that. Eraser, select text. Here.
Now it's a bigger white.
Can you see anything now?
No?
A bigger
still white.
White square.
Huh. That's bizarre. It says I'm sharing, and I'm looking at what I'm sharing. So maybe I'll stop and start again.
Yeah.
Stop share. Okay. So
Sometimes that helps.
The turn on, turn off old trick.
Turn off what?
Turn off, turn on old trick. It's an old trick, that, huh?
I'm not understanding the last word.
No, is that when something doesn't work, you turn it off and then you turn it on.
Oh,
and
yeah. Do you mean unplug it and plug it back again?
Yeah, that's old trick. Yeah.
Okay, let's try again. Okay. Now I'm going to see. Okay, now do you see anything?
No.
Oh, still white.
It didn't work, huh?
Yeah, what's happening? But because here we have a sign that said that we are viewing at your screen.
Yeah. Okay. But we're not seeing the same screen. So let me go back. I'm going to.
So you have more than one screen working at the same time?
No, I don't think so. Okay. hang on one second. I'm gonna make sure that this is.
De repente, él está usando dos pantallas, dos
Dos
usuarios.
pantallas, ¿no?
Está usando dos
Es lo
usuarios.
que le he preguntado, pero dice que no. Dice que no. Lo que él sepa. Bueno.
Here you appear, Glenn, like you are using two users with two devices.
Huh. Oh, I wonder. Let me see. Hang on a second.
A los dos usuarios de Glenn lo he puesto como administrador. De repente por eso es que se ve la pantalla
I
blanca.
changed the thing. Maybe see if it's
Bueno, se está boicoteando el otro, digamos.
there. Some people think this is easy. Yeah. Okay, can you see anything now? You should see it in.
It looks like we are seeing one of the screens and not the other one, and you are seeing the second or the first screens.
Yeah, maybe in your computer you are selecting a duplicate screen.
I don't think so. But something's obviously wrong. So let me see. I don't think there's more than one of these open. No, I'm not showing any other files open. What I could do is I could send you the slides and you could advance them, and maybe I could see them then, and then I would know when to speak.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, send it to Jose or to whomever you have the address.
Anyone? Okay. Let's see.
Let me see.
Sending it to Jose Guzman. So, slides. I'm sorry about all this problem.
It's worth the wait. We are sure.
Murphy's Law.
I don't know what happened there. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Now, José, tú, a ver
Que
tu
pruebe
proyecto.
otra vez, Glenn.
Try again, Glenn, if it works.
Oh, you think it might work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Hang on. Take that down, get this stuff out of my way, and then I go back to here. Okay, and then we try again. Share screen, share screen.
No, it's white again.
Oh, no, hang on. I've got to bring the slides up. Okay, anything now?
No, it's white.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Let me
Okay,
keep going.
José,
José, tú mismo
José, ¿tú proyectas?
Ya.
¿Lo recibiste?
¿Por email?
Hang on.
Por favor, chequen todos si tienen el micrófono prendido porque está entrando sonido de alguien.
Okay, it's loading to send. It's a big file, unfortunately. Okay, it should be, depending on the speed of the electrons and the route they take, it should be in Jose's computer.
Yeah.
Oh, see, un minuto, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just keep going where we were. Okay, so these are what's the text within those sunbursts. And there are things that, I should just give you a little bit of background to make this more persuasive. So this was from a company called Southland Industries. They're a mechanical, all dry and wet mechanical contractor, mostly design build. And and they were preparing they were prepared in the design phase on one project, but they started thinking about, well, how are we going to do the plumbing, right? And can we start planning it now along with the development of the product design, the building design? And, obviously they couldn't study anything on that project because they weren't yet in construction, but they had other projects nearby. So they put together a team. They went over to a neighboring project in the same city, and they just decided to start by looking at something straightforward and simple. And as I say, that's installing a toilet by involving one person, right? And that plumber also participated in the study, and he came up with most of the improvements because he knew the work very well. So some of the improvements that they came up are on the screen. Work with supplier to package the gasket kit with the porcelain toilet, not with the carrier, to eliminate time wasted storing and searching for a part delivered long before needed. Coordinate use of man lift to reduce waiting. Set up tool cart with all needed tools and parts to reduce motion, that is going back and forth, hunting and gathering. Produce a daily work checklist to reduce avoidable trips, again for the same reason. Order adjustable nipple on the toilet carrier to eliminate measuring and cutting to fit. Now, why can't you cut those things where you have, you're in a shop? And use, this was the kind of the most clever one, perhaps. I'm sure that if you do any building construction, you know that one of the real problems in putting in the toilets is putting them in, using them for their intended use. And so to prevent people from using a toilet and making a really bad mess, you have to somehow seal them up. And what I've seen done is they take a piece of cardboard or perhaps even plywood, they cut it to the shape to fit over the toilet seat, and then they wrap tape around and around and around and around, right? And it's really ugly and it makes a mess, and it's hard to get off. And they decided that why don't we just use the box that the toilet is delivered in, and ask the supplier to stamp "do not use" on the bottom. So they open it from the top. When they empty it, they turn it over, set it onto the toilet, and it says "do not use." Okay. So I think that's quite a nice, simple example of reducing waste. Okay, let's go to the next.
Siguiente, José.
Estoy moviendo.
I've given Jose the hard job to do.
Yes. But he always delivers.
Yeah, I know. That's why I gave it to him. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, I'm not going to go into great detail. Obviously, there was some restructuring of this process in terms of deliveries, batch sizing, and that kind of thing. But that's not really we're not really here to learn about installing a toilet. But you can see, if you look again, they did the same non-value adding, value adding, and total time analysis. And you see now that the total time, again on the right, lower bottom right-hand corner on the lower, the total time was reduced to 42.5 minutes, as opposed to 81.5 minutes before. It's almost cut in half, right? And then total non-value adding time is reduced 26 minutes, total value adding time is also reduced to 16.5 minutes. And I think we might well ask, if this is all about generating value, why did we reduce the value adding time? Okay, so advance again, please, Jose.
Por favor, José.
¿Cómo se dice advance?
Avanza.
Avanza. That's good. Okay. Okay, I will say avanza.
Or next.
Okay.
Next.
Next. Will that work? All
Yeah,
right.
next will work.
Okay, good.
José, si le dice next, es que avances.
Okay.
Okay, so here are the comparisons. So before and after. So non-value adding time was 61, it went to 26. Value adding time went from 20.5 to 16.5. Now, if anyone wants to and is able to talk, what do you think might be the reason why value time went down? Value adding time went down. Does that mean we delivered less value?
No, because you improve the working process.
Exactly. And so the whole idea of even the phrase value stream mapping is a little misleading, because it's not really about delivering value. It's about reducing the cost and time of delivering value.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And so value adding time is very likely to be reduced when you change the design of that work process. Okay? So let's go back 1 minute. Anti-avance. Okay, so what we're really trying to do is what we should be looking at when we do value stream mapping or process design is cycle time and the ratio of value adding to cycle time. Okay. So cycle time in this example went from 81.5 to 42.5 minutes. It's 48% better. And the rate of delivery, the amount of the productivity, if you will, that is the value added per cycle time, increased by 76%. Okay? And so I hope that was a useful a lesson. Okay, avance. All right. Oh, just bring them all up. These are all, I was thinking I would be controlling the animation, but so Jose, just bring up avance. Keep going all the way. Okay, good. Okay, so you can read them for yourself, but I will say them so you can read them along. You can maintain a lean attitude and practice lean behaviors all by yourself. Others may join you. Okay? The most important thing about making a reliable promise is that you know you're doing something needed by your customer. The third is we can learn how to make more reliable promises by practicing the reliable promising process and by learning from broken promises. 5 whys is a method for identifying countermeasures against repetition of errors, injuries, and broken promises. As we've just seen, the objective of value stream mapping is to reduce the time and effort it takes to deliver what's valued by a customer. This one I think is really important because sometimes we talk about waste walks and it's kind of like looking for a white car amongst a sea of red ones, right? But waste is not like that. It's not a thing. It's really a potential for reducing cost of any kind, economic, environmental, or social, through innovation, and innovation in process design. And lastly, mapping can be done on your own operations, so you can apply the same kind of an approach to how you do something like do soils testing, right? Then also on the processes within which those operations occur, as in that simple example of preparing a soils report designing piles to those report and to those specifications, and then manufacturing or fabricating those piles to those specifications. Okay, avance. So if we can, I would like to take just a few minutes, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and just take some questions or hear comments about what you've heard so far. I don't know how long you're prepared to stay on, but if we have questions at the end, I'm willing to stay and talk as long as you are.
Perfect.
How about for these?
De repente creo que quieren hacer unas preguntas.
Sí,
no sé si puedes...
eso. Juan Pablo, ¿cómo hacemos? ¿Abrimos micrófono o lo dejamos que las escriban? Yo creo que mejor micrófono y traducimos. Bueno,
sí, mejor micrófono y
primero, pero
traducimos.
que los demás vayan escribiendo por chat si es que tienen más preguntas para poder ir traduciendo y transmitiéndole a Glenn mientras responde.
Sí,
Claro.
José, lo que también decía Glenn es que podía quedarse más tiempo, así que se puede prolongar más de 1 hora.
Ya, perfecto,
No,
perfecto.
eso sin duda, pero para la dinámica de cómo le atendemos las preguntas,
sí.
ahorita abrimos micrófono que alguien haga. Si la puede hacer en inglés, por favor, mejor. Si no, igual la traducimos. Pero y todos los que quieran el servicio de traducción de sus preguntas, entonces, por favor, vayan haciéndolas por chat en paralelo, ¿no? El chat del Zoom, y vamos leyéndolas y se las vamos traduciendo luego, o tú, Juan Pablo, yo, igual va a haber que traducir. Bueno,
sí.
Le traducimos las preguntas a Glenn. Las respuestas sí no las traduciremos para poder avanzar un poco más y atender más consultas.
Los que quieran intervenir, por favor, que levanten la mano.
Y José les libere el micrófono.
Le da el audio, sí. Y como dice Jorge Luis, paralelamente los que quieran hacer una pregunta escribiendo, háganla para ir mirando.
Por favor.
So is there anything I can help with?
¿Preguntas?
Very soon.
Sorry?
We were very soon. We were discussing about how to take the questions and how to translate them if necessary or so.
Okay.
So people will ask by microphone, and also they're going to write down the questions, and if necessary, Jorge Luis and me, we are going to translate them.
Okay. And please do encourage people to write down their questions, because if we don't have time right now, for the sake of finishing the slides, then we can come to them at the end.
Ya. Escriban las preguntas que quieran, porque en caso que no alcance el tiempo, después las podemos contestar. ¿Ya tenemos preguntas, José? Para que suelte el micrófono.
No.
Bueno, vamos preguntándole algo a Juan Pablo para que nos aprovechemos la oportunidad.
Ya.
So, Glenn, I have a question.
Yeah.
In your experience implementing the 5 whys in construction, do they stick to the method, I guess my question is, if you implemented the reliable commitment routine process or so, and you go back to that project 6 months after you implemented it, do they still have maybe the 5 weeks routine that you found out that to be something that people really change their behavior and start working on that permanently, or maybe they lose it along the way?
Well, I think you're bringing up the question of standardization. And obviously, you can come up with a very good countermeasure through 5 whys analysis. But if you don't change the processes that are necessary, in other words, well, let's just take that simple example of the clock with batteries. If you don't implement a process for changing those batteries, notifying yourself to change, right, then you're going to have the same problem all over again. So it's obviously this 5 whys analysis enables you to develop a countermeasure, but you have to then implement and follow up and check to make sure that countermeasure is effective. So, in fact, we have, I'm going to publish later, hopefully into the summer, a new process benchmark for the last planner system. And one of them is to takes on learning from
José que ha deshabilitado el chat. Nadie puede escribir. Ya, bueno, ya lo habilito. No contestes en el teléfono. No, estás escuchando lo de Ballard, ¿no?
Sí, estamos escuchando el audio también de esa participación.
¿Una pregunta?
Parece que decían de que no estaba habilitado el chat.
Sí, eso es lo que me estoy dando cuenta, pero estaba habilitado. Lastimosamente
Okay.
Sí, pues a mí no me aparece nada en el chat. Ah, sí, acá ya.
Sí,
Ya apareció una. Ya, ok. Sí, entró la prueba de Juan Galloso.
Sí está habilitado.
Sí. Well, I want to make a comment, Glenn.
Yep.
What I like a lot of the 5 whys is that it gets you to go to the origin of the problem. No, until you don't get there, you will still having problems, like you said previously.
Yeah, and sometimes you may think that you're at the root cause, but you're not. So,
yeah, you're not right there.
Yeah.
Then you cannot keep your promises. Then you have to go back again.
Right.
My point, Glenn, my prior point was that sometimes what I found at least was that people you start trying to implement this continuous improvement system more or less that you find it, you try to find out the root cause and then implement a correction, a modification of processes and so on. But it is supposed to be something that you repeat and repeat and repeat, you implement, but then you find other places where to try to continue working on this way, trying to continuous improvement, to improving continuously. But I found out that many people do it once and then they say, well, we already corrected everything, more or less, and they don't continue doing the 5 whys and trying to find the root causes of things, and they stop. So the thing that they see it more like a tool that they use once or twice maybe, or when there is a really big problem and not in a permanent way. And so my question was that, did you find it that later on they continue doing it or they lose it? It was my comment or my question.
Maybe the way to come at this is to tell a story that you may have heard already about an American manager who was hired into Toyota, I think at their Georgetown assembly plant in Kentucky. And he was a good, really smart guy, had a good head on his shoulders, was a very hard worker. And he went through the kind of rotation that they do to get people who are familiar with different parts of the work in a plant and in the company. And then he was finally assigned his job as a manager. And the first weekly staff meeting, he was asked to make a report. And he said, well, and he described all the things that he had done and all the accomplishments they had made. And it's just, and the plant manager said, well, what problems have you found? And he says, well, we haven't had any problems. And he says, well, go back and find some and then come back here and tell me about them. Okay.
Yes.
And I think what that says is this point of continuous improvement is you're always pushing the boundaries, right? And so we might figure out a way to better install a toilet right now, but that doesn't mean we won't find a better way of doing it tomorrow.
Yes, yes. So well, in your experience, that happens as well. That sometimes people think that there are no more problems left to solve.
Well, I think it's really a different mentality, right? And it's part of the challenge that we'll talk about just in a few moments about transforming the industry, is that we tend to think of problems as something that's like sin. It's to be eradicated, right? But actually a problem is an indication that there's something else you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Of course, if you if you commit errors carelessly, obviously that's not a good thing, but you might wonder then, if I'm making those mistakes, what was the process for selecting me? What was the process for coaching me? What was the process for training me, right? And so problems are a good thing. But that's not in the DNA of most companies, I don't think.
And Glenn, this is something also cultural here, no? The difference of the cultures, because the system here relies on that when the people ask why many times, okay, if they stop on the third time, no, they don't go to the original problem, they will go back and they're not going to be able to keep with from what they the promise they made, no. So they're going to feel bad because of that. So next time they will ask more until they get the origin of the problem. So that deals with the how bad they feel when they don't keep the promise they made.
Right.
And I think in my experience, when I came back from the U.S. after working there, even though I was coming back to my own country, I was shocked because the people didn't keep the promise. Okay, so that impressed me a lot. And the problem is that in our working environment, in our companies, what we have to ensure is that people feel bad when they don't keep the promises, and they have to be compromised with them. So that is something cultural we have to change in the companies in order to go forward and make the right answer equations until you get the origin of the problem, fix them, and then be able to keep with what you have promised. No?
Well, I think I think one thing to talk about there is what's the role of the supervisor. So we may be asking someone, let's say you're reporting to me, or let's say I'm reporting to you, and I make a mistake and you ask me to do a 5 whys analysis on it, right? But you don't leave me to my own devices. You coach me, you ask leading questions, so if I get to the point of the third why, and I say, well, this is it, then you don't tell me that I'm wrong, but you find a way for me to realize that I'm wrong, right?
Glenn, sorry to interrupt. There is a question that Felipe Franco from Rosario, Argentina is doing. And this, Glenn, how do we know that we are asking the right questions to get to the root cause?
How do we know
that we are asking the right question to get to the root cause of the problems? I guess the root cause is what they.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're. I'm not sure that that's really a critical issue. I mean, what you're trying to do is, if you're asking, I think the question should be, how do we know when we're at the root cause? Is that fair?
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Because if you know when you're not, then you know that you need to ask more or different questions, right?
I have a question, Glenn. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm curious to know, in your experience, if to work with psychological safety as a culture inside our workplaces can help us work with reliable promises and the five why analysis, and how we can implement or we're willing to implement that psychological safety in our
I'm actually going to, if I can ask you, Romulo, to defer that question. I'm going to talk about that in the last. I think that I've divided this into 3 parts, and that'll be in the 3rd part.
Okay.
Okay. So,
I will wait.
So maybe we should move on.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. Let's do. But if anyone out there has questions relevant to this, to what we've discussed so far, please note them, and we can come back to them later.
Okay.
Okay, avance. Am I saying it? Is there an editing?
Estoy, no sé qué, se demora un poco.
Okay. Okay.
Probably a lot of people here that I know. Let me see if let's see. Let's see, so Jorge Miranda.
Yes. Yes.
Romulo. Oh, hey, there you are.
Cesar is there as well. So,
Yes, I see him. He's busy. He's busy. Augusto Cuba. I haven't seen you in a long time. All right.
No puedo pasar.
So Glenn, I think Jose is trying to prove that it is difficult to show the slides so you don't feel bad.
Okay, but that's I'm okay. I'm okay. You can keep it.
So, are you in the Bay Area right now?
Okay, good. All right. So let's see. So the next one should be the next one. Okay, so that's the bottom up things that we can do, but I think we'll discover that the bottom up and the top down are intertwined, but let's not rush to that conclusion. So now I want to talk about obstacles and countermeasures to the lean transformation of the industry. And some of you may have read. Okay, you can go ahead and advance. So, so this is from an International Group for Lean Construction paper that I did with Samuel Korb from the Technion in Israel in 2018. And it's he came up with the title, "Believing is Seeing." Okay, and there's an expression in English, "Seeing is believing." I bet there's one just like it in Spanish, meaning that, you know, once we see what's in front of us, we believe it, right? We believe what we can touch, feel, smell, and see. Right? But when you really poke at that one, it's really not true. Our belief is really filtered by fundamental presuppositions about the nature of reality. Okay, and those presuppositions are what we call paradigms. But paradigms that's what I want to talk about today. But when you look at the total obstacles, the major obstacles to take up of lean are, to read it from bottom to top, paradigms, resistance by those who live off the waste, all forms of theft, right? not understanding how industries, organizations, and individuals change, and the very top, failure to educate the youth in new concepts and principles before they become habituated to the old. Okay? So I'm not saying that that any of one of these is more important than the other, but paradigms are a critical issue. So advance, please, Jose. So paradigms, the concept of paradigms was made famous really by Thomas Kuhn, talking about history and theory of science. And obviously we're applying it a little bit differently to the development of industrial practice and cultures. But he talks about them as assumptions about reality, the filter through which one sees the world. Facts only have meaning through the lens of paradigms. So they are a fact for people who can be persuaded. In traditional paradigms, Lean's claims are impossible. And so you might be comforted by this if you've been tried to talk people into Lean and by talking about its benefits, right? But if they are victim to, they have eyeglasses on through which they cannot see what you're saying, they can't hear what you're persuading them to believe, right? So it's Vance. So here's some examples of traditional construction management paradigms. Trust is for suckers. Win-win is an illusion. I'll wait for the punchline to kick in. You can manage projects by simply managing contracts. Risk is managed when transferred to someone else. If you pay the least price for project materials and labor, you pay least price for the project.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it's just wrong, right? And so, because it would only be, if this last one would only be true if there was no connection or interdependence of anything on anything else, right? So your purchase price would always be the final cost, right? Just sum up all the purchase prices, right? And then this is what it's going to cost. Well, that never happens because of interdependence, right? But one paradigm is that you see strongly in play in traditional construction is where these paradigms, I think, are strongly in play. And there are more, but we won't go into them all now. So advance. So what can be done? So we can use research to capture and develop knowledge about change that industries, organizations, individuals. We can accumulate evidence against the assumed truth of paradigms. Okay, and I'll come back to that in a minute because I've just said that people won't believe it unless they're capable of believing. So why would collecting more data be relevant? But I have an answer to that. Educate the next generation before they become habituated. Work with those who are ready to work with you, and put market pressure on those who cannot yet be persuaded by evidence. Okay. Let me. So this requires a story, as most interesting things do. So when Greg Howell and I started the Lean Construction Institute in 1997, I think it was, we learned the hard way by hitting our head against the wall that it was difficult to get people to believe us, right? Now, what we're looking at is a diagram. It's a variant of a diagram that probably everyone has seen. And it proposes that people differ in their, I will say, to put it in the context of this talk, they differ in the extent to which they are burdened by paradigms, right? So, and the number of people that are in each of these categories differs. And this is obviously an approximation. But when we started, we found ourselves the people who were attracted to the Lean Construction Institute were typically from the first two categories, innovators and early adopters. The innovators, for the most part, didn't last very long because the next buzzword that came along, they would go, after chasing that butterfly, right? The early adopters tend to be the people that we developed along with us, right? So that's where we came up with this idea that we're not trying to persuade everyone immediately. What we're trying to do is help the people who want to work with us. And by helping them, we want to put competitive pressure on the early majority, right? And we want to be, if we can find buyers of construction services who are in that early adopter category, we can put pressure on them from both sides, either both from the client side and from the competitor side, right? And now I think you might have seen that in the last several years, the membership in the LCI in the United States and attendance at its annual conferences continues to go up. And I think that what that means is that we're beginning to bring the early majority on side. I don't know exactly where we are on this curve, probably not possible to know entirely, right? But I hope you see my point is that not everyone is able to hear. And so we have to get their attention through compulsion in the market. And so what we decided to do in LCI was to make the companies that wanted to work with us, killer companies. And we expected them to do their job well. Okay? So, and that's why evidence is important. Once people in the early majority get involved because they have to, they're compelled to, either by demands from their clients or pressure from their competitors, they start actually doing lean. Not all, but some of them will become persuaded of its claims because they have that direct experience. Okay? That puts them in a different position. And over time, as the early maturity comes on side and actually takes up the lean banner, they will start putting pressure on the late majority, right? Now, there's some people who will perhaps never change, but hopefully we can reduce that to a minimum. Okay, advance. So this is a short lesson, but paradigms are among the major obstacles to a lean transformation of the construction industry. Evidence persuades only those willing to be persuaded. Others first require compulsion, demands by buyers of their products, and competition from providers of their products. And by products, I mean here goods and/or services. Once compelled, the experience of lean thinking and practice tends to persuade those previously unwilling to be persuaded. Some, hopefully only a few, will always see the world through the old paradigms. Kuhn's actually says they're very touching stories about, very good people. There was a chemist who was Joseph Priestley, who was sorry?
Sorry, go on.
Okay, who was instrumental in early developments in chemistry. But he was never able to accept the new theory of combustion from oxygenation because it was just absolutely contradictory to the previous theory of phlogiston, which thought that phlogiston was named as a material that was subtracted from things that burn, okay? So, as opposed to oxygen being added to things that burn. So it's not that all of these people who were having trouble persuading they're not necessarily bad people. They just are enthralled to paradigms that are difficult to shake, right? Unless you change the world around them. And you have to change it piece by piece. That's why it takes a long time to make these kinds of transformations. Okay, advance. And I think we can take a few more questions here if you have some.
Hay preguntas, José. Bueno, por favor, para los
No
que
tengo.
sobre esta parte de la presentación, escriban sus preguntas por el chat para poder hacérselas llegar a Glenn. Juan Pablo, me parece que estabas queriendo decir algo.
Sí, yes, Glenn, among the position we can find in a company, I think we should add politics.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Sometime I study many times in companies, there are, I think, people that have other interests, and sometimes they I think they have the way to make things, and they want to keep with that, no, and they don't want the old methods to be changed, and sometimes they hold the key positions in the companies, and they are opposite to the changes, no? So it's difficult to deal with them because I think they don't act as individuals.
Yeah,
they act like a group.
This issue of positional power is really critical. I think we'll talk more about it in the third session, just coming up. But it seems to me it takes both forms, either resistance to change and irrational change. Okay, I mean, think about, how many times have you been involved in an organization where there's a change in leadership and everything that was previously going on is thrown out, whether it's good or bad, right? Not because it's good or bad, but because they want to do things their way. Right? And this is totally contrary. I think probably W. Edwards Deming said it best. His first principle of management is constancy of purpose. And that's absolutely true for Lean. And that's what was not going on when those people were left LCI chasing the next butterfly. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, but I take your point. Any other questions or comments?
Also, Glenn, I follow the idea that you're saying that it's about the paradigms, and there are some paradigms that are harder to there are people that are going to be harder to persuade because of their paradigms, and there are people that that do not want to be persuaded. Yeah. So I took that from your comments or your presentation, but also I remember your words of one presentation a few years ago when you say that you have to change your people or change your people.
Yes.
I guess that's referring to you have to persuade them as far as you can. But when you find some people that do not want to be persuaded, no matter what, then you have to change of human beings.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to give them every reasonable chance, right, to get with the program. But if they just are adamant and they're going to be dead weight or even obstructive, then you just have to get rid of them. I mean, I don't want to sound hard-hearted, but I do want to sound clear-headed.
Yes, of course. We have to persuade, but there is a reasonable amount of effort for that. Beyond that, then it's not being committed, I think, to the purpose that we're trying to follow, because at some point it is going against the purpose, trying to not to be rigorous enough. We have to have a balance into those things.
Yeah, sometimes you can find places where the different types of roles that people can play that are kind of outside the main flow of the business. But that, yeah, maybe I could tell a quick story. I don't know if any of you have read or remember. I talked about working with a precast concrete company, concrete products company in Wisconsin, and they had decided to take up lean. And they did it by dividing the company into 13 different groups. And they started implementing lean with the direct production groups, okay? And the first one was a Waukesha wet cast. And at Waukesha wet cast, they brought together the group, the whole team, and they taught them how to do value stream mapping, right? They taught them how to do tracking and documentation, different kinds of descriptions of the work, and it really caught on. And some of the things that they found were that maybe 40% of the time of the workers was spent hunting for things that they needed to work with, tools or materials, pieces of string, pencils, right? And so one of the recommendations that came out of the study was to establish a material cabinet and have an arrangement, on a pull basis, have that restocked by the warehouse, right? And they also established shadow boards for tools. So, the old idea in 5S is that there should be a place for everything and everything in its place. And so with the shadow board, you could see what was supposed to be there. And if it was or wasn't there, it would be obvious. And the superintendent over Waukesha Wetcast refused to do it. He said, I will not have tools left out where people can steal them and take them home. And he was a trusted, valued employee. He had been with them for years. They did their dead level best to talk him down from the trees, right? But they couldn't, and they finally had to let him go. And that public execution turned out to be the best thing they could have done. It just took the lid off of innovation, inquiry, creativity, psychological safety, as we'll talk about just shortly, right? And I don't recommend just letting blood for the sake of it, right? But sometimes if you can make a gesture of that sort that demonstrates your commitment to principle and to the right things, then that can remove a lot of obstacles.
Jorge, hay una pregunta. ¿Puedes
Sí,
leerla?
la veo. Yes. Glenn, there is a question from Luis Carrion from Peru. Glenn, do you think the main reason that people do not want to embrace lean construction is because they think that lean construction it's all about cutting jobs?
It can be, and that's a really serious problem, right? So if you're in a position where you're taking on lean and you're trying to, what lean does very successfully is it reveals capacity, right? Because you don't need everybody to be doing all the things that they're doing now for as long as they're doing them, right? And so if you have excess capacity, what do? You either use it, invest it in meeting market demand, if you have that, if you're in that situation, or creating that demand, or you let them go. And so you should only do this when you have a plan for succeeding, right? Otherwise, you'll shoot yourself in the foot not too long. Did that speak to your question?
I hope it does. I think it does. I think, but because of time, we should. Yeah, he says yes with Carol.
Okay.
I think we should move on to the next part.
Yep.
Seguimos.
Sí. Avanza.
Avanza. Okay, so now we're going to talk about lean leadership. So how do leaders following the lean philosophy behave differently than others? Okay, let's go. Avanza. Okay, this is a true story. Some of you may know it. there's a David Marquet was appointed commander of the U.S. Navy nuclear submarine, the Santa Fe. At the time he was appointed, that vessel had the worst record in the fleet for re-ups, personnel signing on for a next tour of duty. And they did that, they had that option every year, okay? The Santa Fe had almost no one re-up, right? After Marquet's first year, only one sailor did not re-up. His ship jumped from last to first in the nuclear submarine fleet. Okay, so advance. So what did he do to cause this radical change? As it happened, Marquet got this job kind of by accident. He was trained for a different class of submarine, but the previous commander of the Santa Fe fell ill and he was appointed to take his place. During a drill, shortly after he took over in that job, David Marquet, commander, David Marquet, gave an order, but the helmsman, the man steering the submarine, did and said nothing, except look uncertain and puzzled and decidedly uncomfortable. As it happened, Marquet gave a command that the ship was not equipped to perform because he was not thoroughly familiar with the ship. Remember, he came onto it without proper training. At that point, he realized that from lack of knowledge, he was the most dangerous person on the ship. He could give orders that put the ship and crew in hazard. He was forced to recognize that he, in fact, did not have all the knowledge needed to give the right commands. Advance. So, okay, his solution was to gather, he immediately gathered all his officers in the mess hall and told them, he said, he explained what had happened, he explained the situation, he said, man, here's what we're going to do. Don't wait for me to give you an order. I want you, if you want to do something, say, I intend to XXX, and then proceed immediately unless Marquet immediately countermands it, okay? In other words, he was not going to give orders. This created a culture in which everyone was encouraged to speak up, to experiment, to question, and to learn. So he accidentally, something good happened to him. Advance. So I want to just share, so what Marquet says about this is he said, I had to lean back so they could lean forward. So he had to take himself away as an obstacle. And there's another story illustrating how to lean back that comes from my friend, good friend and colleague, Greg Howell. He was a commander in the Civil Engineering Corps during the Vietnam War. So he ran a battalion of Seabees, as they called them. He tells a story about his captain that illustrates Marquet's strategy very nicely. When the company was planning a new project, such as building a road across a mountain or jungle, the captain invited company leaders all the way down to the frontline supervisors into a planning meeting. When they came into the room, I couldn't find a picture with a bowl in the center of the room, but if there were, it should be there. He told them to place their insignia, the bars on their shoulders, in a bowl on the table, signaling that there was no rank in the room. And when they left, they picked up their bars, put them back on, right? So this was clearly a deliberately safe space. Operator, a foreman, said that's a stupid. So I think what we're talking about here is really lean culture, right? And I would suggest that there are two primary principles that define a lean culture. The first is respect for people. And respect for people is a principle based on the belief that people are the only asset that appreciates. Think about that. People are the only asset that appreciates. Acting in accordance with that principle means challenging and helping yourself, employees, and business partners develop their capabilities. Okay? And that's accidentally what Marquet did. The other fundamental principle for lean culture is continuous improvement. And here, I think the most important thing to note is that the only appropriate benchmark is your own or your organization's previous best. Benchmarking got to be very popular some years ago when people used it as a way of understanding. I think that, well, maybe I'll start that over. It seems to me that the traditional approach to benchmarking can turn into being satisfied with being no worse than everyone else. And so you want to look not against other people. You may look at them and say, well, how the hell did they do that? And you want to figure that out, right? But if you're measuring yourself, you want to measure yourself against yourself. And that's true for whether you're an individual or a division or a project or a company. Advance. So obviously, if we're interested in developing a lean learning culture, we need to know what obstacles stand in our way, okay? And the first one is an organizational culture of knowing as opposed to learning. And here's some signs of a knowing culture. I'll just propose them to you and see what you think of them. Knowledge is seen as private property to be exploited to the sole benefit of its possessor. So instead of sharing knowledge, you hoard it. Those in positions of responsibility find it difficult or even impossible to admit that they do not know everything needed to do their job. They don't ask advice, they don't listen to suggestions, and they expect people to only do what he or she tells them to do. Okay? So, click it, Jose. Thank you. Okay, another key obstacle is a tendency to lose touch, that for leaders to lose touch as they rise in organizations. And I think that has some, it's in some sense understandable that the further away you get from direct work, the more likely you are to focus not on processes, but on results, right? But a negative consequence of that is that you tend to start looking more at training and motivation for improving outcomes as opposed to changing the processes themselves. In other words, we begin to look more at the people than at the processes as causes of poor performance. Advance. So here's some things that have been recommended as what leaders can do to create a lean culture. I think one thing we might say is we want them to make their own people feel safe to do reliable promising, to do 5 whys analysis and learning, right? And to improve their own work. But from the top, we want them to set direction. Remember, we come back again to Deming's constancy of purpose. And this is a different wording for it, but one of the fundamental principles of Toyota is don't let the urgent suppress the important, right? Another key thing leaders can do, sorry, I wasn't quite through there, but it's okay, is teach and coach, and then model the desired behavior. Because as we say, actions speak louder than words, but what you say matters. Okay, so that, well, I want to tell another story. I hope, are people getting restless, or can I tell this story?
Please do.
Okay. Okay, so this is a story in I think it was 1984. The company I was working with, it was a company called Bechtel, which probably you know or know of, took over construction of the South Texas nuclear project, and I was sent to help. Productivity was very low, so I did a questionnaire survey of craft workers on site to find out about delays, causes of delay. The pipe fitters reported that more than half the piping work packages they received from construction engineering were defective. I arranged to meet with the manager over construction engineering to check that out. His name was John, and John took me to his office through what looked like a sea of desks with engineers working away. As he passed the desk, he would ask, "Hi, Julie, how many work packages did you get out yesterday?" He asked that question of many engineers as we moved toward his office. Before we sat down to talk, I already knew that the pipe fitters were right? Because it's what you say matters, right? Especially when you're supposed to be giving direction. So what they were doing was they were focusing on getting out the greatest quantity of work packages, but without consideration of whether they were fit for purpose, right? So I then did a sample of actual work packages that had been released to the field, and discovered that the actual defect rate was 97%. So actions speak louder than words, but what you say matters. Right? Now, the other thing is what Romulo mentioned, this idea of psychological safety. So I came upon this again through Greg's help. He found a video on YouTube of that title, and what it was like, it's about 11 minutes long. It's very short, but it's really an important piece, really important video. And it's Harvard professor Amy Edmondson tells the story. And the story goes like this. I'm a nurse on night duty in a hospital. I'm taking medicine to a patient. I glance at the prescription and I see the dosage. And my God, this could kill her. I'd better call the doctor and make sure he didn't make a mistake. Then she remembers what happened the last time she questioned that doctor about something he had told her to do. And she starts talking herself out of it. Well, it is an experimental protocol. Perhaps in maybe this is okay. Well, surely he paid more attention to it than that, right? She doesn't make the call. And it doesn't matter whether the story turned out well or badly, not making that call is something that she should have done, but she didn't feel safe, right? And being safe doesn't mean feeling safe that you're not going to get shot. It's also feeling safe that you're not going to be berated, belittled, demeaned, bossed around, right? And so Amy Edmondson came up with this, the term it pre-existed, but it had been applied only to individuals. And she applied it to teams, work groups, people that work together, okay? And what she found, so proceed or avance? Thanks. Okay, so she and many others have established this kind of relationship between these different variables. So psychological safety, feeling safe to speak up, promotes learning behaviors, such as talking about errors instead of concealing them, asking for help instead of just blundering on and hoping that it comes out all right, experimenting with new ways of doing things, asking for feedback, and sharing information. And those learning behaviors improve team performance. And team performance is improved not just in efficiency, but safety, quality, innovation, problem solving, and flexibility. Okay? So I think what respect for people is really grounded in psychological safety. Okay? That's not the language of Toyota, but I think that it's the right language in terms of what's going on. So advance.
I take the opportunity, Glenn, sorry to interrupt. I have to leave. I have a meeting that I have to attend to.
Ah, okay.
So you're in the best hands of Juan Pablo
All right.
to wrapping things up at the end of your presentation. It was a great pleasure to see you.
Very good. Thanks for coming.
See you guys. Bye, everybody.
All right.
Ciao.
Okay, so a good question is, what can supervisors, and this by supervisor I mean anyone who has someone reporting to them, right? So it's all but direct workers. What supervisors can do to encourage psychological safety, right? Be accessible and visit go to Gemba, as we say, go to where the work's going on, the direct work regularly, do leader standard work. I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Go ahead. Go ahead, press all the buttons that bring up the animation. Like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. One more. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Go ahead. One more. There we go. Okay. Okay, so you can. Whoops.
Ooh.
I got
That was quick. Okay. Okay, we can all read it. So, but well, we want to encourage team members to discuss their errors and failures rather than conceal them. Show that reporting of errors is rewarded rather than punished, even if you have to create an incident in order, manufacture an incident in order to demonstrate how you deal with errors, right? When faced with problems, look first at process, not person. Acknowledge your own fallibility. You know, find a way to talk about times when you made mistakes and what you learned from it and how you were helped by, hopefully it would be true, by your own superior, right? And model curiosity by asking questions. Okay, so yeah. I will just say for those who might be interested, I'm not going to go into it deeply, but there's, you probably know about that reliable promising is deeply in the work of Fernando Flores, right? And Fernando Flores has some 3 daughters, and all of them were quite outstanding in their own right. One of them, Gloria, has developed a way of, she has an understanding of psychological safety as a mood, and understands moods to be based upon, perhaps unconsciously based on assessments about the future. So if we think about what that nurse was doing, what she was doing in her mind was kind of playing a video ahead in time, saying, well, what if I do call him, what's going to happen? Call that doctor, right? And in that case, it sounds like her assessment of the future was grounded. In other words, she was likely to be right that she was going to get a chewing out, right? Now, whether that excuses her from not doing something that we wish she could have done, I don't think it excuses her. She probably feels ashamed about it. But nonetheless, we can't expect everyone to simply, spit in the wind and have it come back in your face. I know that's a complicated metaphor. Okay, so at any rate, if the idea here is that if moods are not, they're based on assessments that are not properly grounded, we can help change moods from negative to positive by simply revealing the basis of those assessments and that they are groundless, right? And you can start changing the way people assess the future by doing what's listed here, right? So if I, as a foreman or a general foreman or a project manager, when faced with problems, look first at process, not person, the persons are going to be more willing to share problems, share ideas, right? To commit, ask for help. And I think one of the things that one way to think about psychological safety is you feel safe that if you make a mistake, you'll get help, not harm. Okay, advance. We're getting to the end. In fact, we are at the end. Okay, key points, you can bring them all up. One, people are the only asset that appreciates. That's direct from Toyota. Go ahead, advance. The foundational principles of a lean culture are respect for people and continuous improvement. Advance. Primary obstacles to creating and sustaining a lean culture or a knowing culture, and leaders' tendency to see people, not processes, as causes of problems. Okay. And what should leaders do? Promote psychological safety and model lean behaviors. Okay, I think we're to questions.
¿Preguntas? ¿Si tiene preguntas?
This is the time for any of them that you can ask about in the last section or any of the three. Or if you have a comment about them.
O alcen la mano para poder abrir el micrófono.
Well, I would make a comment, Glenn, about people to get comfortable speaking up about their mistakes. What I used to tell my people is that mistakes are like snowballs. If they speak up at time, I think it's easy to stop it, and make the corrections. If they keep quiet, this snowball will get bigger, and the damage to the project or the company will be bigger. So it's better if they speak up early, as soon as they know they have made a mistake, or other one has made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, that's good. That's good. You just but if people are afraid, that may not be sufficient persuasion. Right?
Oh yeah. It's complementary,
right,
to the other ideas. Yeah.
So Romulo, you had asked a question earlier about psychological safety. Did I speak to your question?
No, Juan Pablo, no veo preguntas ni que alguien se la mano.
No, la pregunta es Rómulo. Rómulo, ¿podrías el audífono, el micrófono, por favor, José? Ponle el micrófono a Rómulo para que pueda hacer
Ya
su
está,
pregunta.
Rómulo, ya está tu micrófono. Hay una pregunta también.
Yes, completely, Glenn. I'm very aware, and I'm very interested in the concept of psychological safety, and I think that's very difficult in our industry to implement it in an industry that has a very vertical way of organizing our workplaces, for instance. So that's one of our, I think, key challenges we have, and because that's the framework that we can develop the 5 Why method and the other last planner as a system. I think that's very important to implement it, and all of the key players working in trying to nurture that kind of culture.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I chose military examples.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're talking about warfare, I mean, there's probably no other context that stresses the importance of responding to orders, right? But even in the military, there are ways of engaging people, right, and developing psychological safety. Did I talk over somebody?
No veo preguntas. A ver, un segundo.
I think that there's a question.
Okay.
Ahí,
A ver.
Juan
Sí,
Pablo, hay una pregunta
Juan
de...
Pablo?
Sí. We have a question here from Jose Alfredo Rodriguez. He said, if we are not in a high position in the company, what changes can we propose in order to persuade people into lean and not get a big no from the beginning?
Well, that's why I started with those things that you can do even if you're the only one doing them, right? And so if you have any supervisory responsibility, organizational responsibility, then within limits you can work within your team, right? If you're at a second level supervisory position, within limits you can affect everything below you, right? But obviously what we really want is we want you to be encouraged to be working bottom up, and the leadership encouraged to be leading from the top. So, but I think that maybe you could say what you've tried and what has or hasn't worked and what position you're in.
¿Escuchaste, José?
Entrecortado, ¿qué fue?
No, le hice una pregunta acá a José Alfredo. No, this is a question to José Alfredo, Glenn. Glenn, there's a question for.
The question is, can you go into some detail about what your situation is and what perhaps what you've tried and if you've had challenges, and I don't know, you may or may not share, and feel free to not.
José, ¿puedes darle el micrófono a José Alfredo para que nos cuente un poquito cuál es? Ya. José Alfredo, ¿escuchas?
He may be typing. I wonder, is it on the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Sí, escucho. No era más que todo para saber un ejemplo. Si es que me tocaría trabajar en una empresa y quisiera implementar, entrando como un nuevo trabajador, digamos. Más que todo por eso.
Ya, o sea, no es una experiencia actual. O sea, lo ves a futuro.
¿Cómo? ¿De nuevo?
No, te pregunto, lo que quería saber un poco, Glenn, es en qué trabajas y cuál es tu posición y, digamos, cuál sería tu inquietud en la posición que actualmente tienes.
No, es que ahorita no estoy con trabajo actualmente.
Ah, ok. O sea, lo ves como algo a futuro.
Sí.
Yeah. Actually, he's changing jobs, so he's asking, looking forward. No? I would like to add something about something at what you said, Glenn. If the Jose Alfredo is in a position, and as you said, he worked with his team and applied these methodologies of Lean to his work and his team, and he does a good job. This good job will be noticed by others. So at the end, other people or your boss will ask how you are doing your work in order to get these good results. So by example, other people will start learning from you, no?
No, I think that's very good. I mean, that's exactly what we hope for, is that if we're behaving in a lean manner, then that will be contagious.
Yeah. Let me say that in Spanish.
Sure.
Glenn, please. José Alfredo, bueno, lo que yo quería completar lo que había dicho Glenn, que digamos tú puedes trabajar esto con tu equipo, a pesar de que tú no seas el gerente, digamos, pero puedes tener un equipo a tu cargo o ser miembro de un equipo y en tu equipo sí puedes influenciar, ¿no? Y usar estas metodologías que yo creo que con seguridad te van a dar un buen resultado. En base a esos buenos resultados, tanto tu equipo como tu superior inmediato se va a dar cuenta que estás haciendo un buen trabajo, ¿no? Y entonces van a seguirte en esas metodologías y te van a preguntar por qué, digamos, los superiores cómo van a estar interesados en cómo lo has trabajado para que sirva de ejemplo a otros equipos para que también lo utilicen, ¿no? Entonces, si bien no tienes una posición, digamos, de gerencia donde puedas influir con mayor, digamos, efectividad o más rápidamente, desde abajo también, a través del ejemplo, se puede llegar a implementar esto, ¿no? ¿Eso absolvería tu pregunta, José Alfredo? José Alfredo, ¿me escuchas?
Sí, responde
Eso
mi pregunta.
te responde. Ya, perfecto. Ok, go ahead. Glenn, ¿alguien más tiene otras preguntas para hacerle a Glenn para poderla traducir o hacérsela directamente si prefieren en inglés?
Maybe everyone's looking forward to a Pisco's hour.
Yeah.
You're later than I. You're 2 hours later than me. I still have to take my
Yeah.
daughter to run. So
Yeah, with quarantine, every day is Saturday.
Hay una pregunta
Okay, yeah, here we have another question.
El micrófono,
It's
Rómulo.
from Rómulo. What do you think is going to be the role of lean construction in this new reality of COVID-19? Good question.
I don't think I have an answer. It's a good question.
Do you allow me to answer that, Glenn?
Sure. Anyone?
Yeah. Yesterday we had another lean talk, and Cesar Guzman was talking about that, and we were talking about that, the COVID-19, and now here in Peru, all the projects have stopped. I think there is no construction is not working, and maybe we're going to start I hope in 1 month. That would be good. But we were thinking that everything has changed because we have new safety issues for health. We cannot put the same amount of people in the job site, so that will affect the productivity, the schedule of the project, the contract of the project, the behavior of the people, everything. So it's affecting the whole project. So what I think is if lean production was something important before, now that everything has changed and we have to review everything, the production, the cost of the materials, everything. I think that makes more sense to apply that now than before, because now we have to redesign the whole project again.
Well, let's hope that that you're right. That the need for change will lead to its being encouraged.
Yeah. What do you think, Rómulo?
Yes, I agree completely, but I can't miss the opportunity to ask Glenn what's you thinking. I am convinced that we as lean leaders in our countries has now a double quest in a way, because as you said, productivity is going to be damaged in a way. We're going to have much more restrictions in our capacity of work, and that will make also that our costs are going to go up and our market price are going to go down. So it's Glenn talked about being a killer in the market as our companies. Now we have a big challenge ahead of us. So I'm confident that all the tools, all the methods, our culture are going to be something that could guide us in a path that, as we all know, it's a path we don't know. And as Nassim Taleb talked about the black swamps, this is something that put a crisis in our way of trying to design the future, going back to our past experience. We don't have the abilities of making that switch. So that's the challenge, and I think that also now is the time that our collective intelligence is going to help us getting through that path. So it's all about questions. I don't have anything.
Yeah. I might just add, I appreciate the comment, Romilo, and the sentiment, but it reminds me that I think lean is a fundamental philosophy of managing any type of productive activity. And I think that when it's first emerged or became visible, the focus was on the economic aspects, right? But it's becoming clearer to me that it is the fundamental philosophy for managing toward all the elements of sustainability: economic, environmental, and social. And I think the COVID is really pointing out the social, but with implications for both environmental and for economic.
Mm-hmm. Completely, I agree.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I hope this has been useful to you.
Yeah, very useful. Thank you very much, Glenn, for being with us. And gracias a todos también por participar. Y bueno, hasta until the next Lean Talk.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Glenn.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.
Gracias, Glenn. Gracias a todos. Gracias, Juan Pablo. Gracias,
Jorge Luis,
ya se fue.
Gracias por participar. Gracias, Juan Germán, por ahí estar dándome para manejar bien el Zoom y las conferencias. Mañana seguimos con las conferencias y mañana, si mal no recuerdo porque he sacado pantallas, nos toca a Juan Pablo, si no me equivoco, Juan Pablo, ¿tú estás mañana? No te escucho.
No te escucho.
Bueno, les comparto la programación del día de mañana. Sí, efectivamente, el día 22 tenemos la ponencia de Juan Pablo y estos inicios de Lean Construction en Perú. Los espero mañana, por favor. Gracias a todos por participar. Gracias, Rómulo. Gracias, Juan Pablo. Nos vemos mañana. Gracias a todos.